Hi, this is Amy from Domus Analytics, and today we're here to review all of the updates to the market statistics dashboard provided to you as a service from Maine Listings. On your screen, you should be seeing the Market Stats portal. You have access to this from Flex as a link in the Products drop-down menu. Now, the first thing you may notice on our new update is that there aren't as many dashboards listed on this page. There used to be 5, and we got rid of the weekly trends because we've integrated into your main member dashboard. So we'll get to seeing that later. But for right now, we're going to start looking at each dashboard individually. We'll start with the simplest one on the left, which is our market infographic, and work our way across to all 4 of them. Now, the data is updated each night and is available to you as a member on the 1st of every month. So you're not waiting for long periods of time to get those updates. You can see them right away. So let's start by clicking on this market infographic tab here. It's going to open this up in a new window. And honestly, your infographic is probably my favorite of all of our clients because it's just so pretty. A local artist there made this sketch drawing and was giving a license for it to the MLS for you guys to use. So it's just absolutely beautiful. I love this one. And the first thing that I want to point out, in case you are new to the dashboards and not just here for the refresh, is this upside down triangle. Anytime you see this, it means it's a filter that you can interact with. So if I click here on this February, it will click down to the menu and give you many other choices. So whatever month you want to look at, you have access to that right at your fingertips. You can see we also have filters for your property types, counties and cities in this case, and monthly that I'll get to in a moment. I just want to mention in terms of the geographies, whenever you see multiple geography filters, they are linked. So what that means is if I click here on the counties and I will check on select all to unselect everything, and we'll just grab Cumberland, my city list narrowed itself down from, I think it was 702 to 28 cities. Now, this may or may not be the actual list of cities that are in Cumberland County. I apologize, I don't know all of those off the top of my head. But what it does mean is that there's at least one listing in your MLS that has a relationship between these counties or these cities and Cumberland County. So if you see something incorrect in here that doesn't belong in this county, if it were to get corrected in the MLS, then we would get that update on our next nightly, and it would all be corrected itself. So keep that in mind as you look to these, but it does limit down. For the most part, it should be pretty accurate. Now, the monthly one right here, this filter, this is new. Previously, there was a little toggle switch that lets you decide whether you wanted to compare your metrics to the prior month or month over month versus the prior year or the same year of the prior month. Now, we've taken that away because there's a lot of duplication across the dashboards, and we're trying to make it more clear which ones to use for what purpose. And as the infographic is meant to be a high-level, single snapshot in time that encourages prospects and clients to come to you for more information, we narrowed the scope of this down to specifically just the prior month comparison. And you can see here it says monthly versus January of 25. So that's telling us that the closed sales is up 3.3% from January to February. So we've got that, and you no longer have that toggle switch, but instead we have added this monthly filter drop down. So when I click on this, now you'll see that you have the choice between weekly, quarterly, yearly, or year to date. And this is going to be great in case you're searching for either very large areas or very small areas, right? Monthly is your standard, but if you're looking at a very large amount of data, for example, the entire state of Maine, I can add back in those counties. Now I'm looking at a lot of closed listings here. So let me just narrow that down to a weekly basis. And now I have that at my fingertips. So for the entire state, there were just under 200 sales for the month. On the opposite side, if I'm looking at one of the smaller counties, weekly is really small, as you can see here. When I go to my typical monthly analysis, that's not too bad, but maybe I want even a little bit more, so I can bump this up to a quarterly analysis. So you have a lot more flexibility in this dashboard than you did before. Now, as before, you can still print it, but I just wanted to call out the difference between the print button at the bottom and your browser print function, which is usually in that little 3-line hamburger menu, we call it here, from print right here. So when you print from your browser, it is going to inherit whatever settings you have done on your printer in the past. So if you were printing, in most cases, you're going to be printing portrait from a web page for something that you wanted to save, it would automatically open this up as a portrait to print. When you use the button here, the print button on the infographic itself, it is going to listen to the instructions we have given it, which has said, please print this on a single page in landscape. So it is a quicker way to get to that print for you, whether you're printing it out on paper or saving it to PDF, like in this example. The one call out to that is that if you are using a Safari browser, Safari does not listen to our instructions at all. So you will probably have to do some adjusting, usually on your scale and possibly on your orientation layout, whether that's a portrait or landscape. And that's the market infographic. So a ton of information up here. We've added this additional time filter for you to use that. And that is that one. So I'm going to go back here, and we looked at the infographic. Now we're going to look at market review. Now this one is that next step up in functionality. And if you've ever been to any of our other training classes, you may recall that this one is actually my favorite dashboard because it is so much information in one place. We like to call it the market on a page. So this is the one where you would go to get that month over month comparison and that year over year, the same month of the prior year. And then we've also added in the spark line to show you for each month in that time period what's going on. Now, the reason this is my favorite dashboard, in addition to it having a whole lot of info, is you may notice this horizontal dashed line on each one of the spark lines. That line is showing you the metric over on the right side that you're looking at. So without even moving my mouse over that spark line, I can see here that the closed sales of 756 for the month of February is the lowest point that it's been in this 13-month time period. So it's just a nice quick visual cue that you can see what's going on. Now we still have all the same filters as the infographic with the month, the property type, and those geographies. But here you used to have that 13-month time frame or a year-to-date option. Now we've given you the same drop-down filter you just saw. So you also have weekly, quarterly, and the full year option available for you. So whatever story you're trying to tell, you can get it from this dashboard. Now, what I'd like to call out is I said 13 months because that has been the standard, right? When you're trying to do the same month of the prior year through the month that we're looking at, that's 13 months. So as a consequence of that, this spark line is always going to default to no more than 13 data points. So if I switch this to my weekly analysis, now I'm going to see my current metrics for the week, and I'm going to see it back through 13 weeks ago. So that happens to be the week ending December 7th. Same thing with the quarters. If I go there, it'll go back 13 quarters. The yearly ones are only going to go back as many years as we have data in here for. So off the top of my head, I don't recall how many years are in here, but it's not quite 13. It goes back to 2017. So you will see all of the data we have back to 2017. So that's what you get on these spark lines based on which value you pick here in this filter. Now, before I move on to the member dashboards, I want to point out that you are allowed to embed either one of these dashboards on your own website. So down here, right below the market infographic is this little oval. It says double click to embed the stats. So we're going to double click, and that just downloaded a PDF here. So when you open that PDF, it just has the instructions for you on how you do that. And there's actually a third dashboard that you can choose from if you'd like. I won't go over that one today because there have not been any updates on that related to our new version, but you have the link here that you can get to it. And for all of these, it is just a single line of code that needs to be added to your website. So if you have a webmaster, you can just turn this over to them. If they have problems, we have more information on our support site related to embedding these dashboards. But once they are on your website, you won't have to touch it again. You don't need to go and update those. They will be automatically updated as part of our nightly refresh process. So you just do it once and then it's there. And the big benefit of that is that when you are trying to go out there and do your marketing and get prospects and whatnot and communicate with your existing clients, you can just drive them back to your own website. So you already know what you've got there. It's your branding, it's any kind of blogging you're putting out, and you are consistently sending them to that site where they see your face smiling on your business card, probably a little copy of it there, with all your contact info, and they will associate knowing the stats and getting that information with you and your site rather than from somewhere else. So definitely that is a part of the license that Maine Listings has contracted with us. So definitely feel free to use that. So now back on the portal page, let's go to the Market Insights dashboard. Now, the two that we just looked at are what we consider our public dashboards because it's those high levels of information, and there isn't any drill through to underlying listing data from the MLS. And this dashboard is our member dashboard. So this is going to have a much longer time period. It's going to have a lot more functionality, a lot more charts and things, a ton more analysis that you can do, and we will get to all of that. So I mentioned earlier that we got rid of our weekly dashboard from the other version because it's now part of this dashboard. So down here in our bar across the top middle-ish, you can see it says monthly because that's the default. But if I click on that, it's going to show you that same menu that you've now seen twice already, where you can choose between weekly, quarterly, and your yearly options. And we moved the weekly here to give you one less place to worry about going to, have it all consolidated here. And it also gives you the benefit of having a lot more filterability with the weekly dashboard. Previously, the weekly dashboard only had a couple of filters available, but now I'm going to click my toggle switch here up in the top. This is the same way it worked on the old dashboard. And I'm going to open up my filter panel, and you'll see there are more filters available here, as there always have been. We added even more to this version. And for the weekly, you now have access to all of these as well. Weekly, I think, only went down to price range on our slider filters and only had maybe the county and city here. So you have a lot more ability to drill in. The caveat still remains that when you are doing weekly analysis, by virtue of that, you are limiting the amount of data you have, and stats always works a little bit better when you can include more data and more information. So try not to get down to such small areas that it makes that number meaningless, right? The median price of 3 listings is just the one in the middle, has nothing to do with math or economics. So make sure when you are doing weekly and using all these new filters available to you that you don't get too filter happy and use too many. So let's hide this filter panel for the moment and talk about the dashboard itself. So what you may notice from the other version is that the chart is taking up the whole bottom of the page here. We used to have it at about 2/3 the size, and your metrics were down here on the right side. And then we had some buttons under the metrics, and we had some buttons under the charts. There were kind of a lot of places to click and move around. And we've moved all of the interaction of the dashboard up to the top for you, just to make it easier to know where everything is and not have to look too hard to find things. And you may have noticed that upside down triangle there that says it's a filter, because we've added the ability for you to filter by month now. This is a really big update for this one. We've had this ability on the other 2 dashboards for a while, but we brought it forth into here so you can just click through and choose any month that you need to do your analysis for. We've also done that same thing with your comparison month. So on the top right of the page here is your comparison that defaults to that year over year, but you can change that to any month you want. So the most common use case we heard would be when you're working with somebody who bought a house from you previously, say in August of 22, and they said, "Hey, Susie, how much has my house appreciated since I purchased it from you?" And you can go in here and say, "Wow, since August 22, it's gone up 12.3%. That's our appreciation rate." So that's the biggest use case. I am sure there are others. If there are any appraisers listening today, you often have to do different time periods and whatnot. So now you have that ability. You aren't just limited to that year over year and month over month. But we'll go back to that year over year for the rest of the demonstration. So taking a look at the chart itself, this one in particular is going to be the only one that you see with the straight trend line across, right? I have the regular line chart in yellow here, and I've got this straight trend line for the median dollar. This one was specifically added for the appraisers for all of your Freddie and Fannie requirements that have now been brought forth. And you guys are actually the only client in the country right now that has this. So we got the call and they said, "Hey, can you help out with our appraisers?" And you were the first ones to call. So you're the first ones we built it for. And we've been getting great feedback on what we could do better. So it's here for now. We have gotten the request to work on adjustable time periods. So when you change the time period, that trend line will adjust for you. We do have that requirement. So there's a few things in the hopper about that. So keep an eye out in the future for some changes there. But for now, this is the one you have. This is the only chart you're going to see this on because that was the only requirement that we had for that at the time. Now, you also probably noticed that horizontal dashed line. That's my favorite little dashed line again, that's showing you the median sales price where it is right now related to what's been going on in the entire time period. So it's just that nice visual reminder. And then we also added in our little hash marks here. When you move your mouse over the regular line time series here, it brings out a horizontal and a vertical to anchor you on each of the axes a little bit better. So that should make it a little more clear what time periods you're looking at. And if you didn't know already, there's a fun little feature on this chart where I can click anywhere on the chart, but hold your mouse button down when you do that. And then you drag it across either direction. It works both ways. When you let it go, it just zooms in on that chart for you. So if you didn't want to share the entire time period, you can zoom in a little bit and then talk about that. And then we can unzoom that with my little reset button in the top. So let's go over the other buttons in the top now. So previously, when you wanted to capture a portion of the dashboard for sharing, either in a newsletter or your social media, we recommended the screen capture. That would be your Shift key in Windows Shift and S as in screen capture. But now we have two additional ways for you to save that information. And the first one is this little button here on the left that's called download when you hover over it because it's got the downward arrow. That will download the chart to your downloads folder, and then you can grab it and paste it in wherever you need. And right next to that, we have our copy button. And trying to hover and get it. Yep, it says copy right there. That's going to copy the chart for you as well. So you can use either one of those. Screen capture is still great, especially if you just want a tiny portion of the chart, not the whole thing. But these are two more ways that you can do that, which then brings us to the last icon here. This is our data download icon. So diverting for a moment, we'd still have the functionality where you can get to the underlying listing data. So that'll be either on the metric here at the top or even the comparison metric or any data point, or if I was on a bar graph, I could click on any bar. But when you double click on a single point, and I'm going to try my double click again. Sorry, my mouse is being a little bit funny for me. There we go. When you double click, it's going to open up this window and it's going to show you all of the individual listings that went into that calculation. Now, this isn't a window into the MLS. This is our copy and our data warehouse. So if you're looking for information that isn't in here as you scroll across the screen, maybe you want number of garage spaces. We don't pull that data, so you can just take your listing ID and look that up in the MLS directly. So that's just something I'd like to call out. You can export this to Excel if you need. Maybe export the list and send it out to your clients in a mailer of, hey, what's going on in your area? Whatever the case, that is still there, your individual listing lookup. But this new data download button, this is going to download the aggregated totals. So when you click this, it downloads an Excel spreadsheet, and it's going to show you the June 24 number was 405. Then the May 24 number was 399, and April was 382.5, etc. So it downloads all of the aggregated totals. Maybe you're one of those people who keeps your own spreadsheet over time that you like to track things, or you've done your own types of charts in different formats that you need that for. Whatever the case, you now have the ability to quickly download all that data rather than hovering over each data point one by one and typing the numbers in, because that was literally the only way you could do it before. And I've done that too. So felt your pain, and we have now solved it for you with the little data download button. Just a note, all of the metrics that we're about to get to are also defined at the top of each chart. For the most part, I'm sure you know all of these, but it can get a little bit confusing when you talk about things like days on market, since there are so many variations depending on who you're talking to and what they're trying to communicate to you. So we do have those definitions up there for you. Now let's talk about the metrics. So just to the left of that metric that we were looking at is our metric list, and we have added even more. I lost count of how many we had. I want to say our total number is like in the 30s if you have data like price change that we can put in here, which you guys don't yet. Sorry, that's a Flex issue we've been working with them on. But we have added some more metrics. So let's go over everything that's new on here. The first thing is going to be this sold price per square foot and per acre. Previously, this was a single metric, and depending on what property type you chose, it would show you one or the other. It was basically land would show you the acres, everything else showed you square feet. And if you chose land and single family, for example, it just ignored the land and it only showed you the dollar per square foot. So now we have separated those out into two different metrics. So if you're looking at your land properties and you want to see square foot per land, it'll calculate it for you. That's fine. Especially if there's like a big plot of land or a farm with a tiny little house on there. Sure, we can do that calculation. It might not be something you need. It might be something you're kind of interested in. Whatever the case, it is there for you if you want it. So those two are now available. So let's talk about the next four, because these guys are related. We've got the percent of list price received and the percent from list price received, and then the same for the original price. So we'll click on that first one. This is the one that you have previously had. It's the one everybody kind of talks about. You know, what was your list price received? Some people will call it your sold ratio. It's got lots of different names, but it's that metric that varies by tenths of a percentage each month, usually between about 94 and 102. You guys are a little bit higher than that, but it generally stays right around there. And it's a fine metric. People are used to it. But there is a small percentage of people who don't like to talk about the data in those terms. It's confusing for people to understand it or explain it or whatever the case. We live here in Nevada, with all the casinos. People will see a sign and say 98% returns, and they'll think, wow, that's great, because 98% was like getting an A in school, right? And they have a hard time understanding that, no, that means that you only get 98% of your $1 or however many dollars you put in there back. That's what that means. But people sometimes have a hard time with that. So we just flipped this metric around to talk about it in the other way that people like to. And that's what we called the percent from list price received. So when I click on this, I want you to watch the charts, the line charts. Sorry, I haven't had enough coffee today. I want you to watch the chart and see what happens. So I clicked on the metric there. We're looking at the percent from list price received, and that chart, wow, looks exactly the same. The only thing that changed is the left axis here. So this is the same data. It's the same line. It's pretty much the same chart. Now we are just talking about it in terms of we got about 2% less than we wanted from our list price. So it really is a personal preference. We don't have a horse in this race. There's no right or wrong as far as I'm concerned. It just is a matter of whatever one you would rather use. And we did that for both your regular list price, which is the last list price, and the original list price. So we have that for each of those. So now we're down to some more metrics here that you've had, but I'm going to stop and talk on days on market because this is the one that can confuse people since there are so many different definitions. Now, in your case, that days on market field in the MLS is the number of days from the list date to the contract date minus any time off market. And this is reported in the closed month. So this is exactly the way Flex reports it. So we brought this forward. This is new for this version. We didn't used to report it on the closed month, but there was confusion because the number would be different in Flex. Now, I want you to take a look at this number here. It's 40. And now I'm going to go down to another metric. We're just going to scroll down. And if you didn't notice before, we've grouped these metrics into kind of their subject areas. So we've been looking at the closed listings, and now I've got some on-market ones. And now down here under my contract metrics is my days to contract is what we're calling this because we're trying not to confuse you. But this one is that same days on market field from the MLS. But we are now showing it to you in the contract month. So this is how we have always been showing it on the Market Insights dashboard, and it's continuing to be showed there, but we just renamed it days to contract. And the whole point is that we know that this data is available to us, and we know the contract month, it's in there. Why wouldn't we report and share the information we have as soon as we have it? Right? The more recent information is a lot more valuable to us. And the other interesting thing to note here is I told you to remember that other number, which was 40. But when we report it in the contract month rather than in the closing month, it is actually less than half of that. We're looking at, barely 3 weeks for these houses on the market. And that's just telling us that the market is moving faster than it was. So if you're telling people, oh, we are 40 days on market, well, that might have been true, a few months back, but right now we're actually on market a lot less. Those times are shortening quicker. So this is how we've had it on the other dashboard. So it's still here. We've just given you the choice to look at it how Flex looks at it or how we like to look at it here. Totally your choice. Like I said, we prefer this one because it's a little more recent and gives you a better picture into what's going on in that market. So I'm going to go back up here and show you a couple more market day calculations. Days in escrow is exactly as it sounds. It's going to be the number of days from that contract date until when you actually close. It's not necessarily economic. I'm sure there's some appraisers who are interested in this, but generally you may have some clients who are asking you for advice. How long should they make their escrow period? And you can say, well, I'll tell you what everybody else is doing, and you can go with that, right? So that's why we brought that one forward, because we had the data. So why not share it with you? Which brings us to one of my favorite new metrics, the list to close date. Now, some MLSs also call this days on market because this one is a number of days from that list date all the way through the close date. Some people think it's on the market until it's closed, right? It's not done until that lady finishes her singing. So this list to close date, I actually like to call it the when am I going to get my money metric, because when your sellers are asking you how long their house is going to be on the market, that's what they're really asking. They want to know when they're getting paid. When is my payday so I can go out and buy another house or go out on a cruise or who knows what. So this is that list to close days. And this does not deduct any time for off market because it is truly from when that house went on the market until when that seller actually had a check in their hand. And it doesn't matter if the house was on and off, if it was that same house and that same contract, That's what is in here. So that from that 18 days to contract to 73 days overall, that's a pretty big difference. And that's important information for you to be able to share with your clients, right? And when you can give them more accurate information like this from the get-go, they're going to trust you more. So helps to build those relationships. Now we have median living area. That's a new one. It's not quite as interesting in your market right now, at least. I think we're looking at the entire market here. Yeah, I have all the counties. Some of the other markets we were finding when we did this analysis that the housing sizes were literally decreasing over the years. One of them in South Florida used to be at about 2,400 square feet, and now they're down to about 1,600 square feet for their median living area, which is crazy. So either the houses are being built smaller or it's just the older ones selling now. I don't know what it is down there, but it was weird. Yours is at least a little more stable. You know, you've got about looks like 100 square feet variance here up and down. So that's not bad at all. But it is a new metric that we put on there for you. And maybe as you move to some of the smaller markets or different property types, it'll change for you. So we've got that there. So now let me go back because this one is fun. I'm going to click back up on my sales price before I show you the next metric. And I want to draw your attention to the top of this chart here. So right under my little arrow change in the middle is this nice toggle switch called Show Mortgage Rate. So I'm going to click on that, and that's going to add in that dashed line. That is the mortgage rate from the St. Louis Fed. That's a weekly number that they publish on Thursday evenings that we then grab and aggregate up to each month. So we have a monthly number, and then if you're doing weekly analysis, you'll see that week. But this is going to show you how that mortgage rate is impacting all of those stats. So you can see what's been going on here with this mortgage rate. This overlay will be available on all of these time series charts. And if I go back to what was right down there that I almost clicked on, mortgage payment, you can see exactly how that mortgage rate hit that payment number. So back at the start of this chart, those mortgage rates were there and they were staying pretty stable and our payments were staying pretty stable. And then watch that mortgage rate. It starts to go up and the payments go right up along with it. Like that's the story. That's what everybody's feeling. And this is based on, I need to fix that little typo, not the %5 down, it's 5% down. This is based on that. And we made some assumptions for other numbers, but we also just used your median closed price number with that mortgage rate to get to this. So that's on there. Really just helps you tell those stories and talk to your clients about what's been going on in the market. If you wanted to print out just that mortgage rate for any reason, that is also a metric available down at the bottom. We put it all the way down there and that'll just print a chart for you with that mortgage rate. So that is there. We sometimes get questions about affordability and people will get wrapped around, oh, well, the median salary just went up, and this county over here, can you do this by county? Because the salaries really vary. No, newsflash, the salaries don't make any difference at all. It's really all about this mortgage rate and how that impacts the prices. So this is really a powerful chart. We're really happy to be able to bring mortgage rate through for you. So let's get rid of that and move on and talk about the other few new metrics on here. We've got your on-market metrics, your contract ones, and then we've got down into the active metrics. So supply of inventory. I just want to point out that previously this was called months supply of inventory, but since we also let you calculate this on the weekly data now, we just changed the name to supply of inventory, because if you're looking at the weeks, it is going to be the week's supply of inventory. So that's the only thing to note on that one. Otherwise, it is the same metric that you've had previously. And we also added another one on here. So right below supply of inventory, we've got absorption rate. Now, absorption rate and MSI are basically two sides of the same coin. And there's actually a good FAQ on our support site about it. And you can get to the support site with my little question mark here. If we double click that, that will open up what we call Domus University. And if you were to type in absorption as I spell it. Yeah, I'm spelling it correctly. There it is, absorption rate versus month supply. You can read all about it. Some of these little guys will be short 2-minute videos and whatnot. But it really is just depending on whether you prefer to talk about absorption rate or month supply. It's the same principle. Just again, your comfort level is what should dictate this. So it is there for you should you want it. The last new metric is our pending inventory. So we've always had active inventory on here, but back in the day when we first started doing this, we had some clients that said, well, for our inventory, we want active and pending included in that. So we had some clients where their inventory number was much, much higher because it was both of those statuses. And then we eventually got to just active. And then recently someone was like, well, what is going on with pending? So we brought it back. So now you can look and see what's pending. We don't differentiate in here between if it's pending and you're still allowed to show it or still taking offers versus no, this one feels pretty solid, or with contingencies without. We don't get into that level. This is just if it is in a pending status of any kind over the months, it'll be on here. So we can see, back a couple of years ago, there were a lot more pendings, August of 2020, there was a lot going on. And now we are at our lowest point of pending houses. So that is the last new metric that we added. So I'm going to go back to closed sales to show you the rest of what we have going on here in the dashboard. Now we've been looking at the time series here right under the metric is my chart type. And I can click on this and go down to price distribution. You also had this one on the other dashboards. And if you wanted to break this out, you could. We had previously underneath, there were some buttons by property type and county, at least. I'm not sure which other ones were there. I didn't look at that recently. So you do have the ability to break out this one and the time series we were just looking at, but we brought a new chart on here called the comparison column. So I'm going to click on that, and it's going to be the world's most interesting chart. There you go. It's fantastic. I know, visually stunning. To make it even better, though, you're going to need to use the filter right above that. So it's underneath my metric, but above the chart, it's called no breakout by default. But this is where I can set what I want to look at. So it's not the buttons underneath the chart anymore because there are too many of them to do that. So we put it up here. So you can look at your property type, your counties, etc. We've got by new construction, by your waterfront, if you want to see what kind of sales it was, whether it was cash and what kind of financing. We looked at square foot range as well. We put that on there. So we looked at median living space earlier. So I can break it down even farther and say, well, let me look at each bucket and see what's going on. Now, what you might notice on here is that you're thinking to yourself, wow, these guys are really bad at sorting. Look at that. 500 to 1,000 square feet. It's like in the middle of the chart. That's weird. That's weird on purpose. We actually built this chart to show the largest value here on the left, right by the axis, and it goes all the way down to the smallest value. So every single breakout will have this same kind of format from biggest to smallest across. So we didn't alphabetize or run it numerically or anything like that. This was done that way on purpose. And you'll just have to remember to put a breakout in here when you do this chart. Otherwise, you get that nice, boring single column over there. So we'll go back and put that one out on no breakout. And then the last one here is the county map. Now, you guys have had a map for a while. I believe it's on the Maine listings website. And there's a couple of charts along with it, but we didn't want to make you have to go out to the website and out of the product if you needed the map for something. So we put it in here for you. And you can zoom in and out using the little pluses and minuses if you just wanted to maybe focus on, these little counties here. Just little in land area, not in their numbers necessarily. But, it adds some bling, right? You always need to try to stand out. So if you have a nice, pretty map on your pitch prezo to, say, the out-of-state buyer who wants to see what's going on in some of your counties as they're deciding where to live, then you have that ability to do that and right within here, within the other analysis that you're already doing. So we brought that in for you as well. And those are all of our charts. I just still wanted to point out, so I'm going to go into my filters and I'm going to add, let's just add one property type there and show you that these breakouts do work for these other charts as well. So just like it did before, I can add my property type. Come on, I can add my property type. There we go. So now it's showing me that breakout as well. If I go to my price distribution, it's going to show me that breakout as well. So you have a ton of ways to slice and dice the data on here. So definitely dig in and use that. In terms of all of our filters, as I mentioned, we did add a bunch more filters for you, but they all still work the same way as they did before. One interesting thing here is, for example, let me pick on Cumberland. So we'll click on that guy. When there is nothing selected, it defaults to all of those things. But I want to show on here, if you can see the text, it's kind of it's black and it's darkened. And see where it goes. There we go. So you can see from here, from Yarmouth to Abbott, it changes from dark to kind of grayed out. That means that Abbott and everybody else below it do not exist in any of the listings with Cumberland as the county. So it still shows you the values, but it just grays them out and moves them to the bottom of the list if they aren't relevant to whatever you have selected. So same thing on the zip codes here. If I scroll down at some point, there we go, I get to the zip codes that are part of the data set, but not part of Cumberland. So that's a little change that's been made here. And that is the member dashboard. So a ton of updates. This one got the most updates of all the dashboards for this new version that you have. So definitely spend some time, kick the tires. There's a lot to see and do in here. And now we are at our final dashboard, which is our pricing insights. Now, pricing is not an aggregated stats engine like what we've been looking at. Pricing is the one that's meant to be used in conjunction with your AVMs or your CMAs to help you get to that pricing. And you have to make some choices before it shows you any data. So we're just going to grab single family. We'll pick on Cumberland and grab Portland there. And now that's going to open this up. And we'll just show you what has changed on this one. Not quite as much. We moved a couple of things around is essentially what we did on this guy. So we've now called out what we are looking at for this market that we chose. The median sales price is in this top blue bar here, along with the median sales dollar per square foot that used to be over on the side here. And instead, the side is just dedicated to the pricing analysis. So we previously had our little proposed boxes up top, and they were pre-populated, but that was a little bit confusing as to what those numbers were for some people. So we blanked that out, and that's now on the side, and our gauges are zeroed out. So let's talk about this data. In fact, before we quite do that, I'm going to add a little bit more data here, because I just want to show you a little more. South Portland, okay, and we're looking at last month to date. I'm going to add last 3 months just to get, there we go. Now we're looking at 205 listings, which are down in the bottom here. So that's how I know how many I've got. And now this is what we have here. So I have this chart that is broken into 4 quadrants, and it's divided by these 2 black lines. Now the vertical black line here is showing me the median sold price. And the horizontal black line is showing me the median price per square foot for this market. And now in my bottom quadrant here, this is what we call our low price value listings. So low price because it is less than the median sales price, and value because it is less than the median dollar per square foot. So this is going to be your starter homes, your older homes, your smaller homes. It's a great area for new home buyers to be looking at, or an investor who might want to put some money into it to flip it. It's your smaller, less expensive homes, right? Above here in this quadrant, this is what we call our low-priced luxury listings. So they are still lower than the median sold price, but they are luxury listings because they are higher than the median price per square foot. So maybe this is one of those older homes that just had a massive kitchen redo, or they just redid the whole landscaping and put a beautiful gazebo out there and a water feature and whatnot. Whatever the case, it is now selling for a higher dollar per square foot. Then on my bottom quadrant here on the right, I have my high priced value listings. So these are higher than the median sold price, but still lower than the sold price per square foot. So maybe that's your older homes that tend to sell, not older, I meant to say bigger, your bigger homes that tend to sell for a smaller dollar per square foot. Or maybe it's new construction that somebody just said, give me whatever is standard. I'm not doing any of the upgrades. We just want to go in with the basics and worry about changing things later. But these are going to be lower than that median dollar per square foot, which then brings us up to our top quadrant, which is our high price luxury listings. So the guys over here are higher than the median sales price and higher than the median dollar per square foot. So if I click on this active one here that's calling my name, that's Ballfield Road. If you know that one, you're probably thinking, yeah, that's move-in ready. They just did a major redo on it. It's gorgeous. It's on the water. Who knows? But anything up here, especially as you get into the top corner, should really be move-in ready. Nobody wants to be hiring a contractor the second they overspend compared to everybody else, right? So that's our 4 quadrants here. And now how you use this dashboard is you can say, all right, Mr. Seller, let's talk about the price for your house. You've said that you want to sell your house for $1.4 million. And you've also said it's about 1,800 square feet. Let's see if I picked a good number here. There we go. So now I've got these blue lines that popped up here. So right where these blue lines intersect, that's where this property would sit, because every single one of these little triangles, no, they're squares, they're just on their side, diamonds, let's call them. Every single one of these diamonds is an individual listing. So I can click on this one and say, all right, Fern Lane, how does that compare to your house? Because according to my chart here, it says that Fern Lane is a little more expensive than yours, but it'd probably be pretty close in terms of luxury. Do you feel that's correct? And then you can have that honest conversation to get to that right price for that listing. And if Fern Lane is way nicer, then you might need to lower your price there. And if it's not quite as nice, then go ahead, raise that price when you go to market. It's really meant to just show you where one property is in relation to another or all of the others, because that's how buyers view the market. When you take your buyer out on their home tour and you're showing them 5 different properties, they're comparing those 5 in their mind. So this is just the visualization of that and showing them where they compare on a chart. And you can do one of these for all of those properties that you're showing your buyer. You can say, okay, buyer, we've got this one that we looked at that was only 1.2 million. That's down there on the chart. My lines moved down a little bit lower. And if you're spending 1.2 million, maybe you want to go out a little bit farther. And I've got this massive house that's 2,800 square feet. That's even lower down and closer to our value listings. Is that where you want to be? So do this for every property you're looking at. And you can actually use this box here that says selected listings. When you double click on that, that's that trick that will drill into the listings for you and show you all of them. So you can see them all together in one place rather than clicking, one at a time and getting the address on the bottom. So a lot of ways to use this, whether it's with the buyers or the sellers. I see people use this one at open houses. They will print this out for that property that they're showing, along with a dashboard like the market review on the one page. And then you've got a single sheet of paper that you're passing out to people and saying, hey, if you liked the house, here's the information on it. Gives you your high level stats, gives you this compared to everything else. Call me if you need more info. Right? It's a ton of information to be able to share out for people with those dashboards. So that brings us to the end of our presentation today. And hopefully you found some cool new things here that you're excited to go out and use. Now, if today was your first view at our market stats and you haven't used them before, there were definitely things that I didn't cover. And I know we went over a lot today. Head over to our support site because there is a lot more information on there. You can look at some of those small videos, like I said, and ask some questions, just type them in, get some answers. But the whole idea is that we hope that you found at least one dashboard that will be useful to you in your day-to-day work life. So with that, appreciate that you taking the time today. If you have any questions, comments, concerns, definitely reach out to your MLS and get that back to them. We listen to feedback from them all the time. A lot of what you saw in this upgrade was direct feedback from users who have said, hey, I really need this, or I'd like more of that. So we do take that seriously and put that back into our product. So once again, thank you very much, and happy selling, everyone. Bye now.